Good morning, everyone. I am here today to begin a new math unit with you, Unit 12, which is going to be discussing fractions. Now, I'm going to give you an overview of a lot of the things that you'll see in this unit today, and we're going to take things slow, and we are going to begin today simply by identifying equal parts, shapes that are divided into equal parts, and what each of those parts is called. But tomorrow we're going to be moving on to 12-1, which is going to jump into some new concepts. So I want to be sure to give you a little bit of a head start with that today so that we can review it again tomorrow and get a full understanding before beginning the work from the Envision series. Okay, so to begin, fractions are a part of a whole, or parts of a whole. They represent only a part of a full object or a full set of things, so it's not one whole. So fractions exist between 0 and 1 on a number line. Okay, now we're going to begin by looking at how to write a fraction. So if we look right here, just a straight line, that is called a fraction bar. And to write a fraction on a fraction bar, we put one number on the top and one number on the bottom. So I'm going to begin with a very, very basic fraction, 1/2. 1/2 is written with a 1 on top and a 2 on the bottom. So here we have 1/2, and each number has a name. So the name of the number that goes on top is called the numerator, and the name of the number that goes on the bottom is called the denominator. So there's a way to remember that the number on top is numerator and the number on the bottom is denominator. So numerator begins with an N, and denominator begins with a D. So the way that I always remember that the numerator goes on top is that the N can represent north and the D can represent down. So again, numerator goes on top, denominator goes on the bottom, the N for north and the D for down. Okay, now I've written here some of the unit fractions that we will be learning. Now, a unit fraction is a fraction that always has a 1 on top. So when we're talking about one part of a whole, it is representing the unit fraction. So we've already discussed 1/2. So here is written the fraction 1/2, and again, that's a 1 on top and a 2 on the bottom. 1/2, 1 for the numerator, 2 for the denominator. The next one is 1/3. That will be a 1 on top and a 3 on the bottom. A 1 in the numerator and a 3 in the denominator. 1/2 and 1/3. Next is 1/4. Again, 1 on top in the numerator, 4 on the bottom in the denominator. And we go on. 1/5, 1/6, 1/7, and 1/8. But the thing that you need to know here is that unit fractions always have a 1 in the numerator. The interesting thing about unit fractions is that the bigger the denominator gets, the smaller the fraction actually is. So 1/2 is pretty big. If we look here, okay, 1/2 represents half the object. 1/3 represents 1 out of 3. So since it's 1 out of 3 instead of 1 out of 2, you're actually getting a smaller piece when you're looking at that unit fraction. So 1/2 is actually the biggest unit fraction. 1/3 is the next biggest. Here's 1/4. And here's 1/5. Okay, so the denominator represents the total number of shapes, the total number of parts in the shape, and the numerator, the top number, represents the number you're discussing. So since we are discussing unit fractions, we're only talking about one part for right now. So again, the unit fraction here, 1/2, is discussing just one of those two parts. The unit fraction here, 1/3, is only discussing one of those three parts. So the numerator represents the number you're discussing, and the denominator represents the total or the whole. Here we have 1/4. We're only talking about one out of the four. And here we're talking about 1/5. We're just discussing one out of those five shapes. Okay, so these are unit fractions. The unit fractions always have a 1 on top, and then the denominator, the number on the bottom, discusses the total number. Okay? If we kept going and kept dividing shapes into the unit fraction, if I did 1/6 here, okay, the parts keep getting smaller because you're dividing it into more parts. So you're taking a shape that's about the same size and you're dividing it into smaller and smaller pieces the more you divide it. Think about a piece of pizza, a big whole pizza pie. If you cut it into 4 parts, you would get 1/4. That's bigger than if you divided it into 8 parts, which you'd only get 1/8. You'd get a smaller piece. Okay, so you can divide shapes into fractions, but there's other ways that fractions can be represented. Fractions can be represented by looking at a group of objects. Okay, here I have drawn 3 circles. If I wanted to tell how many of those circles are polka dot, I would say that one of them is polka dot, 2 have stripes, so 1 out of the 3 are polka dotted, so that would be 1/3. If I wanted to talk about how many had stripes, I would say that it was 2/3 because 2 out of the 3 have stripes. All right, so that's another way that you can look at fractions. It can be a part of a group. If I bought 100 of something and I had 20 people, okay, I can take that 100 and I would want to divide it evenly amongst those 20 people. So the group of objects would be divided. Okay, think about pizza. If you had 4 people in your family, how many slices would everybody get? Everybody would get 2 slices because you'd be dividing that 8 sliced pizza into 4 different groups, so everybody would get 2/8 of that pizza. Okay, now here another way that you can represent fractions is on a number line. So fractions, as I said earlier, exist between 0 and 1. Okay, 1/2 is halfway between 0 and 1. All right, so here I'm looking at this number line between 0 and 1, and I see that it's divided into 4 equal parts. Starting at 0, and I see 1, 2, 3, 4. I have to go right up to 1. From 0, starting at 0, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's divided into 4 equal parts. So each line represents one of those parts. So this line here represents 1/4, and then the next one is 2/4. The next one is 3/4, and the last one, the number 1, can be represented as a fraction. You can say that it's 4/4. So 4/4 is equal to 1. Okay, now I wanted to introduce you to this concept here today because it's a little challenging and it will be on your work for 16-1 tomorrow. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see it a little bit better. Okay, now as you can see here, these grids, they don't look like they're divided into equal parts, but I'm going to tell you now that they are divided into equal parts because it is the number of squares that is important in this type of problem. So let's start with this one. It's a little bit easier. So inside each square, or not square, inside each portion are 6 squares. So I have to look at it and see, okay, this portion here has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This portion has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This portion has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then again, 6 here and 6 here. So that shape is divided equally. It doesn't look like it maybe right away because the lines don't line up perfectly, but it is divided equally. Now I want to know, what fraction does each portion represent? Well, I'm going to count now the number of portions that I have. So here I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's 5 portions. So one of the portions is equal to 1 out of 5, or 1/5. Now you will see problems like this too. Now this one obviously looks a little bit maybe more confusing than this one, but again, I'm going to count the number of squares in each shape. So here I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Here I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Here I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And here I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So each portion does have 7 squares inside of it. So they are all equal. Okay, and now I want to know, what fraction does one portion represent? So how many portions are there? Here's 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's 4 portions. Again, here's 1, here's 2, 3, and my 4th portion here. And there's 7 in each, but so each portion represents 1/4. Now I will go over that again with you tomorrow, but I wanted to introduce it for today so we can sort of get a head start on it, because I definitely anticipate it giving a little bit of a challenge for some, if not all, students. Today's work is going to be mostly simple. You're only going to have to identify the name of the fractions that are being shown. So, for example, if I get, when I erase this, okay, let's just look at these 4 shapes here. All right, so what we need to do first, we need to make sure that each portion of the shape is divided evenly or equally. So if we look here, okay, this has 3 different parts, right? Okay, so that's 1/3. No, it's not 1/3. Fractions cannot be represented with this shape because they are not the same size. Each portion is not the same size. So you would say not equal, or the groups aren't equal, or the portions aren't equal. Or it might just say not equal. Over here, again, a circle can't be sliced like that. A circle can't be divided evenly going like this because this part here is much smaller than this big part in the middle, or even this part here, and then this part is pretty small too. Okay, a circle can be divided evenly like this. I'll draw that, sort of like a peace sign, going from the center point. Okay, now we have 3 equal parts. Or a circle can be split in half, as long as it goes through the center. or it could be split into fourths too. Okay, but a circle can't be split that way. Okay, so then again, you would choose not equal, not even, whatever the option was. Now, when you do see a shape with equal parts, then you have to name the parts. Okay, so if you look here, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, so you would select fourths. And if you see this here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you would select sixths. Okay, so that's all you'll have to do for today, but I wanted to take a good long time to introduce some of the concepts that you'll be seeing throughout this unit so that when we do see them, they're not a surprise. Okay, I hope that was clear enough for you, and we will continue moving on through this unit. This is fractions are a challenge, so we're going to really take our time and we're going to learn it the best we can. All right, have a great day.